Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast, How to Solve the 4 Biggest Data Problems from the MarTech Explosion. Today's presentation focuses on how to solve key data challenges that the rapid expansion of the MarTech industry has created. Now I would like to introduce today's presenter, Ted Svikas. Ted is the Director of Solution Consultants at Telium and has been running the North America Solution Consultants team for over 2 years. He has several years' experience with marketing channel technologies and IT enterprise software. Ted excels at taking complex business situations and envisioning how technology solutions can provide real business value. Ted, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Meredith. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. Thank you for joining. What we're going to discuss today, we're going to go through a lot of where we came from in the MarTech industry and where we're going with Telium and what the value is with our solution. Let's start with an understanding of how we got to where we were today and look at the MarTech landscape circa 2011. We can see very clearly in this graphic that things were a lot easier a few years ago. Different areas of technologies in marketing, like channel technology, data collection technologies, data processing technologies, started to proliferate circa 2010, 2011. It started out with only about 150 of these kinds of solutions, but as the years went on and digital marketing really began to show its stripes and drive new revenue streams for companies in new and innovative ways, we saw this explode in a very short period of time. And I've been in the industry for a couple of decades, and this is one of the biggest kind of explosions I've seen in this kind of sector. So now we're up to around 4,000 solutions in this industry, and we have a lot to choose from in order to drive our digital marketing strategies. But just like in years past, whenever it was another type of technology, whether it was enterprise software, or CRM or ERP software, we see the same conflation of technologies and the desire to aggregate all of them into a single point of control or the single source of truth. We've heard these acronyms before, and it is no different in the MarTech landscape. We have too much technology in place that's contributing too much data, and big data is just getting bigger and bigger. So this has led us to an area where we can literally see the gaps between these technologies. One channel technology isn't speaking to another. Labor is arranged around each technologies, and specialists are formed. There is a push towards aggregating the data offline, but it's not real time. And this drives more inefficiencies. And so it becomes less a technology issue than it is a process issue. And so there is a need to unify this data across this landscape and provide the benefits of real-time marketing to achieve more important goals such as personalization strategies that we're seeing take place in 2017 and will continue to take place. So that has led to what we've defined here at Telium as the 4 biggest data problems that we see. Our job at Telium is to be the plumbers, and you'll hear us say that a lot. But we see, from a data perspective, a lot of operational lag taking place because of this proliferation of data. We see a lot of labor inefficiently interspersed across the channels. This is leading to poor customer experiences, and that's driving less revenue and impacting our bottom line. And last but not least, there is a major albatross hanging over our shoulders in terms of customer trust and the legal risk and how we would indemnify ourselves as we collect data in a new world. And so we're going to address the theme of how we solve these 4 problems throughout the rest of this webinar. Let's start with operational lag. And this can be described as a long cycle of taking data to market and activating it. Essentially, it's the point integrations that we're using to collect data and run campaigns, especially sophisticated ones, are taking a long time to activate. Many of our teams are starting in silos and communicating with each other's in manual processes. So for example, a marketing manager wants to launch a time-sensitive campaign, but can't do that until the tracking team has placed a tag on the website, and that could take weeks to do. So it requires developers' resources. The channel technology can't do that on its own. So an agency is brought in or a consultancy is brought in. The analytics strategy is not relevant to the developers at this stage. So they don't understand what they're collecting the data for, and they can't innovate. They can't suggest new ways to collect that data. So that does what I call pushes the log jam further down the river instead of breaking it. And so what we do is we solve our own problems for our own purposes and then let the other team solve their own problems. And we think it's a good idea because the people solving the problems are the specialists. And so this of course works, but the implementation is always delayed. And there's always a time issue with every customer that I've seen in the last couple of years. The downtime leads to lost opportunity cost as well. Instead of running 10 campaigns a year, we only ran 3. And that's because of this operational lag. And people complain about it, but they have no idea how to solve it. And it becomes very clear that automation is the only solution in this place. We've got to automate some of the manual operational lags that have occurred. So we'll leave that as food for thought as we move on to the next one and drive a little bit deeper into the inefficiencies of these teams. When these teams start to work independently and do what we've paid them to do, they'll do a very good job in each of their silos. But their data that is produced is meaningful only to them. And that's another prevalent issue that we've noticed in every customer, despite verticals. People do great jobs for their particular point in the stack. And having said that, integration doesn't become a big focus because efficiency in each silo is pretty good and people understand how to grade themselves. But if you're overseeing a massive marketing stack that spans every single channel and every single capability that covers data collection, enrichment of that data, integration into the data lake or the enterprise data warehouse so long-term strategy analysis can take place. If you have that view and you see that, you can instantly see how the teams can be doing 1 or 2 things less instead of duplicating their efforts across each and every silo. As an example, 27% of marketers, they report that their best-of-breed MarTech stacks is what they're after. But only 42% will admit that their technology is fragmented and piecemeal. And that's because they don't see the bigger picture. When that technology stack isn't integrated, people are going to start waste time in duplicating the same tasks over and over again. I see a lot of enrichment tasks taking place in every single silo, whether it's an ESP or social channel or a data lake, for example. We're always enriching the data so that it fits that particular silo. So there is a need. The fix required here is very similar to the operational lag. We need to collaborate across these silos, and the way to do it is to create a data taxonomy that's meaningful across the silos. So it's not so much automating that, but it's agreeing to a process step that will take the inefficiency from these silos and start to unify them. The third problem that we're seeing, it's more of an impact to the first 2 problems. When you don't work well as a team together and you don't have automation to solve operational lag, to drive the data faster, what's happened is you're not doing things at the right time and you're not directing your marketing campaigns at the right people. And that is a traditional problem that afflicts us in marketing and probably will continue in the next little while. We're trying to automate that as an industry. We're trying to say, look, it doesn't take much to have our web or mobile site understand who exactly is looking at our real estate in these domains. But the problem is that latent ability to change and the miscommunication leads to disjointed messaging across those silos. So it's hard to retain customers when you don't have a single source of data coming in that can react in real time. You need to take all 3 in. And the classic example I can give is with personalization strategies. You're not going to know who that customer is unless you have his or her historical data set. You're not going to know how he or she came to your web or mobile domain, or which of the two he or she prefers, unless you're listening and tracking that user on a consistent basis. And so good customer experiences can only be understood and automated if we understand the past. And so combining data collection with data enrichment is going to be important for that. One source of data that we can fix in real time is unifying that messaging across the stacks. Every single silo that takes part in a customer experience, whether it's the CMS that generates and renders the web domain real estate, or whether it's the data in the back end that drives the creatives that show on that site, all of them should be looking at the exact same profile. They shouldn't have to access siloed data sets that are at risk of being erroneous. And so the poor customer experience, once again, can be addressed by unifying data before that experience takes place. We should be working off a single data set at all times, and then this problem simply goes away when that occurs. Let's take a look at the last one. We run into this a lot, and as I said, it's an impending risk that will hit the market very soon for the United States and North America as a whole, and it's already landed in Europe and other areas of the world. And that's you may have heard the acronym GDPR, but the legal and privacy risk of collecting data is very, very quickly coming to the forefront of digital marketing news and headlines. A lot of fear-mongering is happening. A lot of rational voices are arguing against being too extreme one way or another. But one thing is for sure, we have to give consumers and users the choice of how to protect themselves and how to understand whether they want to be tracked and if they have the right to be forgotten. And those kinds of capabilities are key to indemnifying yourselves against a user base that can easily sue you for the risk that you unwillingly gave them as they entered your domains. We see at Telium a 4% annual revenue at risk to fines over lax data protection. We're also hearing news that it's not just a fixed number. In many cases, when companies break the law, whether they do it accidentally or not, the fines will be graduated to the level of revenue that they're earning rather than a flat fine. So times are changing, and having the ability to control and govern when and how that data collection takes place is not a nice to have anymore. It needs to happen right from the start. The data that every business has in their back end that creates profiles and is automated to enrich needs to have the thumbs up from the consumer right from the get-go. And that's the kind of thing that Telium has been solving for many years, and it's part of our mantra to remove and eliminate this risk from our customer base. So you can look at the scope of the 4 problems that I just explained from an engineering point of view. Certainly, you can understand that there's many tasks that we can take to automate and break through some of these operational lags or remove risk. But it all comes down to cost, time, and risk. And these are the 3 factors that any of our customers will use to determine whether they should be buying our software. At the end of the day, nobody buys software unless it addresses cost, time, and risk in an aspect that automates a process or eliminates it completely. That's what we use software to do, and Telium is no different. Neither are the rest of the 4,000 solutions in the digital marketing stack. If these 3 things, cost, time, and risk, are optimized to a point where it makes sense to buy the software, you'll do it. From a cost perspective, here's what we're looking at to justify this. There are way too many technology silos. You've seen it from the very first slide. They cost far too much money to operate and to maintain. The level of error that you are bound to experience from running these in silos is tremendously too high. And we cannot scale at those reasonable costs when so many silos require specialized skill sets. companies are finding themselves hiring out, bringing in specialized agencies, hiring consultants to solve one or two pieces of a 10-piece problem, and then merging that all together by the end of the year. And so these digital marketing strategies, from a cost perspective, have incremental gains over a 5-year plan. Speaking of time, it takes far too long to collect and enrich and activate data. It takes far too long to configure that technology to make sure that the business goals are being aligned to. It takes far too long to analyze that data as well. And when you take too much time to do things in a real-time world, you've already lost. No matter if you have the superior software that sends a wonderful display ad, either through a direct buy or a real-time bid buy that's more dynamic, it doesn't matter. You're still too late. And that's because you're taking too long to do something efficiently. And so that needs to be automated as well. And the last one is risk, and this is probably where the CFO will come in and judge the entire investment of your MarTech stack and understand where the holes and the gaps are. It doesn't matter if you have the best technology. It doesn't matter if you have a wonderful workforce that's highly educated and skilled in configuring it. If you are not using that technology correctly and you've missed the customer, you keep sending the same message over to the same person, or you're sending the emails or display ads or social native ads to the wrong person, that's going to hurt in the end. The risk that you take not only in missing the mark, but what you could have done with that budget had you automated correctly is really the overwhelming loss of revenue that we're experiencing. And cost and time all figure into risk from this perspective. Ultimately, we can get past a marketing acquisition phase fairly quickly in an automated fashion. It's where we start to nurture our customers and engage with them after purchase and drive and upsell and continue to build new revenue streams from these customers is where we're missing the mark. So acquisition isn't so much a problem nowadays as is nurturing. And those very few customers of ours that we see that do it right and nurture a customer correctly across a conversion funnel or across a customer journey that they've automated, they hit a lot of headwinds when it comes time to protect the brand. That's when the pie is limited and it becomes a knife fight with other competitors in their industry to maintain that. And so the brand becomes the main focus, and brand-based marketing requires first-party data in a real-time fashion, even more so than engagement marketing. So here we've explored the major organizational problems in light of cost, time, and risk. And we've also discussed the gaps that have led to a need for the Universal Data Hub. So let's rephrase and make sure that we understand the next part of this webinar and how we're going to look at it. The UDH is providing enterprises access to better data in real time. That's a big differentiator. This hits cost, time, and risk across the board. We look at ourselves as a data hub, or in many more technical terms as middleware. We're incorporating relevant data in a single location. It's fantastic that we've got this data in a single location. Many other technologies do that as well. But once that UDH from Telium is implemented, we also connect this data in real time throughout the enterprise. Every single silo starts speaking the same language, monetizing the exact same data, and interacting with each other systematically in an automated fashion. In other words, I like to tell my customers, once the UDH is in place, you push the button and you're on cruise control. Your rules of engagement with the data from silo to silo are on autopilot. So it's a single approach, the Universal Data Hub, that organizations are managing their critical data. They're making it easily accessible to every silo, every channel, including CRMs, customer care, live chat, ad tech stacks, operational systems. In other words, this is the plumbing, the pipes that you put in place that finally connect this disparate ecosystem together and take advantage of a single taxonomy and a single set of digitized rules to activate the data. When we get to that point, you're going to see that there's 4 key tenets that you can identify in the Universal Data Hub that have made your world a better place, that have optimized cost, time, and risk. And the first is that we consider first-party data first. There are many other technologies out there that do a wonderful job in collecting third-party data and activating it and giving some kind of return to the business. That's fantastic, and we look at third-party data as ancillary to a larger data set, and that larger data set is first-party data. That first-party data is the customer itself, and this is truly where it's more than just business speak. We're actually doing customer-based marketing with Telium's UDH. We care about the customer. We care about the history of how that customer arrived. We care about the customer's behavior. We care about their habits, their device preferences. And through that insight in real time, we'll be able to understand how to market to that individual and what that individual wants to see. So first-party data first is where we stand. We think there's a tremendous amount of efficiency to be gained in the collection and enrichment of first-party data in an automated fashion, not through an enterprise data warehouse 2 weeks later, not through a data lake 3 days later, immediately. Having that first-party data available and hovering from domain to domain, whether mobile or web, that first-party data set, that customer-facing first-party data set is available for the technology to use. And that data is flexible, the second key tenet. Data flexibility, you have to have the ability to enrich this data set at a moment's notice due to behavior or action inputs. And it doesn't matter whether that data comes online or offline, whether it comes in from a POS system, from a retailer. If your strategy is bricks and clicks, we want the data from conversions and purchases across your enterprise, not just across a web or mobile. And that includes IoT as well. Telium is adamant that our implementation for a single line of code onto any IoT device like a beacon is all we need to collect data and enrich it in the Universal Data Hub. So we use multiple data models to do this and multiple sources. So there's a number of different points of structured data that we're always going to get in from offline sources. And of course, the data will be unstructured as well. Regardless of the nature of that data model, it can be sent to the Universal Data Hub, and we will automatically stitch that data to the first-party profile. That's one of the key benefits of the Universal Data Hub. There's no further processing to do. Once they come into the door, they have a place to live. The third area is being vendor neutral. In order to deliver first-party data and activate it across the different silos, we have to be neutral to the entire system, i.e. we cannot cannibalize any of these channels. We cannot pretend to take over the data lake or the function of an enterprise data warehouse. We have to be concerned with real-time data, automated enrichment, and the digitization of business rules to achieve that first-party data set, and it has to work for every single technology in that massive ecosystem on slide 1. And so that's Telium's commitment. We do that. We are the agnostic layer, and our concern is to simply collect, enrich, and activate. We're the plumbers. And so regardless of which ESP you use or CRM, we're going to continue to urge you to use those. Whatever makes sense for the business from a silo perspective and channel perspective is important to support. And so Telium's UDH will do that. Only 16% of users are going to say that it's the only tool they use when they go with the big marketing vendors. And we know what those are. Those are big vertical stacks that you can buy into. And we like to think that they can solve our problems. But typically there are gaps. And as this industry grows, every 3 months, a new idea and innovation seems to come out, and the stack is 2 years behind it. So that's a big problem in the strategy. Best of breed seems to be the way to go. As people cobble together different technologies, the biggest problem they're going to have is to get a singular data set to support them all. So vendor neutrality is a big, big deal. The last aspect, the key tenet that we're going to look at is real time, and your data needs to be available in real time. I can't stress it enough. It's one thing to collect data and to enrich it, but your system should be future-proof, ready when that data arrives, and be able to instantly create a new strategy and drive revenue the minute that data arrives. And that's a big challenge because silos don't work that way. So as users, for example, move across cross-device experiences, the speed of data will become more important. the availability of cross-device activity is going to become more important. As an example, many things that I see in the industry today, a browser is used to, or I'm sorry, a mobile device is used to browse products, where users are sitting down perhaps in a mobile fashion and taking a look at products on an e-commerce site or reading data sheets on a B2B site. And then 2 days later, they'll actually use a desktop browser to engage, register, authenticate, and eventually purchase. And so we see that kind of behavior. All of that's captured in real time, and we should be able to instantly switch the way we interact with that user based on that data. Because the Universal Data Hub does that in real time, you will have that capability. Let's take a look at how the UDH works, and this is kind of the big slide today. At the very top you see in different colors, data collection in green, data enrichment in blue, and data activation in orange. Those are the three main capabilities that will be automated across the Universal Data Hub supply chain. And you can think of what you're looking at right now as the supply chain from left to right. It starts at the left with devices and data sources. A key functionality for the Telium Universal Data Hub is to be able to collect from all of them. And you see the icons from all of them. Whether it's a mobile phone, a watch, a browser, or a bigger machine. Whether it's a telephone and CRM system that's getting data from users via voice or text. Whether it's offline or a POS system, Telium is there, and it's collecting the data and importing it in a standard fashion. And you can see the magic of how we do that in the next column over, the data layer column. This is where the most critical piece of your implementation of the Universal Data Hub will take place. It's establishing that overarching view of data in a very holistic manner. The number one thing Telium will do when it comes on site to implement is we'll say, tell us about the data you'd like to collect. Don't tell me how, don't tell me which technology it's coming from, just name the data. And so we'll start to get an understanding of the business just by understanding the data they need. And this can include demographic data, the name and the identification of the user to some extent. And it will include navigational data. Tell me what the user clicks on. Tell me how long the user stays on. System data. What aspects of our web domain and mobile domain are these behavioral aspects taking place on? Why did it take place? That kind of thing. Tell me about attribution data. Where did this user come from? In what fashion did the user arrive? That data layer abstracts all of these key informational inputs into a single source right from the get-go. That's our secret. We do it right at the beginning, right at the source. And the minute we do that, all of the translation goes into the central column that you see that we've labeled as the Universal Data Hub. You see a number of different statements written out in the middle. Define and govern. This is where we can govern the creation of the data layer in a very scalable manner. We can lock down the data layer to make sure that only the right people in the organization have responsibility over those data variables that we just defined. This is very important for audits. It goes back to legal and risk. It's very important to implement from the same solution that's collecting your data, and that's what we provide. The second one is the business rules. We shouldn't have to meet anymore. We shouldn't have inefficient teams sitting in a conference room going over a number of different spreadsheets and understanding what to do with data in the meantime. If you're doing that, you've already lost a large percentage of your market. The business rules need to be digitized. We need to be able to say, once this data arrives into the hub, let's move it. At the same time, we need to be able to move that data to data lakes and enterprise data warehouses so our friends in the data analyst section of our organization can continue to form long-term and mid-term strategies, but we want to activate the actual real-time strategy, and that's why we digitize our business rules. That will lead to creation of audiences. Audiences are not segments. Segments are backwards-facing static groups of user data that you want to target based on some analysis. We don't think that way in a Universal Data Hub. With a Universal Data Hub, users will jump from segment to segment in real time, and they'll do it dynamically based on real-time behavior. So we felt that it deserves to be called an audience. because you can be in many audiences at the same time, and you can be in there for many different reasons. How do we do that? You see that with the fourth statement, stitching audiences, stitching visitors together. One of the biggest problems, the biggest tasks in a data analyst's world is understanding who's who in the zoo, so to speak. Who are these visitors? Are they the same person coming in the mobile phone as the web browser? Have they performed the same data? Is some of this a duplicate data? That stitching is a major task that we've automated at Telium. That is out of the box, and we call it visitor stitching. It's our patented function. Because we have the ability to instantly detect who the user is despite device entry or despite behavior, we're able to create audiences on the fly. We're also able to do the fifth thing, which is enrich data on the fly. Whether you come in through a browser or a mobile phone, we know it's you, and we know to add to your profile. Having that ability in real time allows us to take the next step. We can stop right here, and we can say, this is great. I've got 100,000 customers coming in on a daily basis. This is their profile. Send it to the data lake. Let's get some reports out, and let's figure out what to do with these guys. That has value in and of itself. That's very likely what many of you are doing today in some shape, manner, or form to some degree of expense. We're going to do it in real time, mind you, but why stop there? Let's take action. We have the data in place. We've already digitized our business rules. The users have moved into audiences that are meaningful to the business, i.e. we know whether to send them an ad. We know whether to pick up the phone and call them. We know when somebody has moved from being a window shopper to a high-value customer who's spent more than X amount of dollars on our domains across the enterprise, web, mobile, and offline. So why not take action right away? That action capability, we can move over to the fourth column in this diagram and see that the action can take place in a number of flexible ways, and we've got all the different means of taking action covered for you. In the Universal Data Hub, we can take action on event-based data, and that you see at the top of that column, the tags. Tags are simply an integration that push session-based data in real time to some endpoint to take action. There's nothing wrong with using tags, but we also allow you to do it from the server side using APIs, and we call those connectors at the UDH. We can actually invoke purpose-built functions on the server side in a CRM or on a social channel to push the entire first-party data set, i.e. the audience data, into its destination. We can do it with webhooks in a really flexible manner. We can do it with custom libraries. All of this is capable of being done, and the whole time we're pushing it back into a Redshift database or an S3 bucket to accommodate entry into a data lake or an enterprise data warehouse. It happens simultaneously. Net, at the end of the day, all the vendors that you see on the rightmost column, whether it, again, despite the channel, despite the technology, they've all been fed the same data. Your Universal Data Hub has proliferated this data across the channel stack, across your marketing ecosystem, and also across your data supply chain. So everybody in the organization in real time has the exact same data and understands where it is in motion on the data supply chain. Let's take a look now on why this is valuable and the most popular things that we see where the business will understand the value. The last slide showed how the data supply chain works, and as technologists, we can understand that because it uses the traditional themes of unification and taxonomies and APIs to make it happen, and we've done it in a very unique way. But from the business's perspective, how do we talk to them? What is the ROI? What is the business value that they will see from doing this kind of thing? You can see that data collection has 5 key areas where ROI is going to be realized. The universal data layer, as I just explained, is the first. Having the ability to abstract data as an English language that business people can talk about and implement in a point-and-click fashion is extremely important. It's step one, create that data layer. That data layer is your blueprint. From this point forward, it determines what data will enter your enterprise, and it determines what type of data and how it's considered. So first and foremost, that has tremendous value to it. The next one is flexible vendor delivery. Telium's marketplace is 1,000 strong and growing. are extensions that have the ability to curate data in real time upon that data layer to ensure that it arrives to those vendors are also point and click. All of this is done in a SaaS-based manner. This addresses cost and time immediately. It flattens it and nearly eliminates it when you can point and click your way through the data supply chain. That leads you to a benefit of controlling your data. You are the people who own your data from this point forward. You do not need to hire an agency to say, show me what we've collected today. You do not need to pay a vendor to create a report for you and download it in JSON or structured SQL. Those days are over. The data exists in the Universal Data Hub and is automatically integrated to a Redshift database or an S3 bucket for you to analyze with any BI tool of your choosing. Security and privacy is also going to be forefront. Having the ability to address the upcoming GDPR and the legal and risk implications to your business out of the box with the same technology that collects the data, again, that's not a nice to have anymore. It needs to be part of the solution, and it's part of the UDH at Telium. Last but not least, SaaS-based delivery using multiple CDNs. It's great that we can collect data and activate it, but so what if it's not arriving in time? What if it comes and it's too late and customers can't see our wonderful data that we've built? That's why Telium cares about the deployment management and release management of this data. It's very important that the UDH go through dev, QA, and prod in a point-and-click fashion and immediately get published to a network capable of delivering at enterprise-class speeds. Telium, you'll find, is always #1 on this performance and availability, and we take a lot of pride in that with our multi-CDN across the world. UDH will have the ability to instantly understand which node under which CDN is most likely to give the fastest experience to your users. This delivery aspect is critical, and we monitor it on a monthly basis to understand our performance capabilities there as well. That is the last mile of delivery from a data collection perspective, and it needs to be worldwide. Some of the areas in data enrichment are also going to be key. And let me just switch slides. Whoops. A second to walk back. Data enrichment will also find 4 key areas. Stitching devices and offline. This is visitor stitching at its finest. As soon as data enters the UDH ecosystem, it bonds together to the same first-party profile. If one doesn't exist, we create one. And so whether it comes in offline from a POS system or a spreadsheet or an S3 bucket, we will stitch it to the right profile in real time. Ingesting and engaging offline data, as I just mentioned, that needs to be automated. It's not valuable to you if you have offline data that's key to building these profiles that take several days or several weeks to ingest and enrich and understand who it belongs to. So we've automated the process of stitching offline data as well. The third area is creating those audiences. Audiences need to be in real time. We can't take our first-party data and take it offline, create the audiences, and then bring it back to silos piece by piece. In a lot of cases, that's what I see happening in today's industry. These segments look different based on which silo you're working with. In Telium's case, the audience that we're going to create will be done in real time. We'll be able to take real-time action as well with these audiences. So you'll be able to decide which segments need to be used immediately and which ones you can cool down or put some frequency capping on it. This real-time action is also very important because, it automates what our business is telling us. For example, we want to go through a conversion funnel. If we're at the top of the funnel, we want to engage in a very approachable manner, but not too aggressive. And so maybe you come in through an email. You can then start a stopwatch with Telium and say, if that didn't work, let's move on to the next stage of the conversion funnel. Let's engage through a native app, like a social channel, for example, and see if that works. All along the way, we are tracking the effectiveness of these marketing strategies because we are taking real-time action and seeing the outcomes. And so that capability to prioritize which channel you use based on real-time behavior is very likely a net new piece of functionality for your organization. And that leads us to the final capability of data activation. Being able to unify this data in real time before you activate Very unlikely that this is automated today. It's more likely than not that a lot of people are getting together to understand which data is necessary to go into the social channel as opposed to the ESP channel, as opposed to the CRM, etc. That leads us to the second one, the central hub for data collection. By definition, if you're using one single piece in your environment to collect and enrich, that's where you're going to also have to activate. And so it's very natural for the Universal Data Hub to take on and become your integration partner, to actually take on the responsibility of moving that data to a real-time vendor. We've already spoken about owning your own data and correlating the visitor view, but it bears emphasis. Being able to stitch online and correlating how those users are reacting across the channel will drive new revenue streams for your business. You'll be able to make better decisions in the future because you're seeing how visitors move and how they behave in different channels based on this unification. So let's take a look on how the UDH in summary will affect three main areas of your digital marketing ecosystem. The marketing cloud that you're building, we can feed this data and fuel any point solution within it. So the applications will have, right out of the box, an integration with the Universal Data Hub. This is critical. Any marketing cloud that you've chosen, whether it's best of breed or with a single vendor or one or two, the Universal Data Hub will integrate with. This is a primary tenet of Telium's Universal Data Hub. The second aspect is big data. We will complement your traditional business intelligence processes from your data warehouse and data lake. We do not disrupt this. That must be key because there are key processes inside the big data supply chain that cannot change, that the business is already benefiting from. We simply complement it. And that's a big factor in making a Universal Data Hub work. In essence, what you're going to have is a storage place for real-time data that you should be reacting to in real time. That's the UDH. And you should also have a back-end system, such as a warehouse or a data lake, that can react in medium term as well as long term to build new strategies. That doesn't change. And so the UDH affects big data supply chains in a very positive manner. The last piece is the point solutions. Oftentimes we'll hear, do I have to get rid of my point solution? The answer is no. We're going to fuel it with the exact same audience data that it's used to. In many cases, your configuration of the point solution will never have to change. How it receives data will be impacted by the UDH, but there's no action to take from the point solution perspective. You wake up one day, you're running an email service provider, nothing changes. Telium's still providing the same data to that email service provider, but this time it's real first-party data instead of data that doesn't go anywhere. So taking a universal approach to customer data. This is the ROI conversation that we want to begin. There's more ways to make money, and there's better experiences that we can have when we have the UDH. What's the net of the value that we get from introducing this brand new piece into my digital ecosystem? We can calculate cost, time, and risk, and the simpler we can do it, the better. Oftentimes, the most popular approach that I take when I go on site with customers is I take a look at their data collection that you see at the top. How many tags are you managing? Most customers have anywhere from 20 to 25 on the average. I've seen many businesses go above 50. Managing each of those tags in an independent fashion, they've already realized it's completely unscalable. Each of these tags takes a number of different hours to do so. We can come up with a very simple calculation that leads applied to a standard labor cost to understand how data collection is draining our budget. The release, deployment, and change management cycle, going through IT, once you do this, disappears completely with Telium. All the tag development, QA, and publishing routines are built into the Universal Data Hub from Telium. This is no longer something that you have to pay a service utility for or an agency for. It's in part of the Universal Data Hub. Taking a look at another popular ROI perspective, the data enrichment. That's a huge task. Collecting data is one thing. The number one complaint I hear is that there's way too much of it. We don't know what to do with it. And so we have to look at data from different contexts. What does this data mean to an email provider? What does it mean to a CRM? What does it mean to an ERP or offline? And having that kind of human interaction slows us down. So a data enrichment automation tool is going to directly impact your bottom line depending on the number of channels that you're using and the average time that you spend configuring this data and the segments for every single channel. And this typically skyrockets, and it's a very little understood metric in most customers. So this is a big one. And the last one, activating it, making sure that your data warehouse and your data lake are getting enriched data that's already been correlated and curated at the source. This is the part of the job that data analysts hate. They don't want to do this. There's too many errors, there's too many duplication data, and they miss things because they're not being given the proper data variables. We'll do it for them. They're going to get enriched data from this point forward using a universal data hub, and they'll be able to spend their time on more strategic suggestions of what to do with these data sets. So those are 4 examples of where you're going to find ROI. There's also soft ROI that you'll realize just by definition of the universal data hub existing in your architecture. For example, your web property performance is going to improve by scales because you have a multi-CDN architecture. Security is something that's out of the box now. It's point and click. You never have to worry about complying with user regulations again because you're automating their choice of which tags are turned on or turned off. And so you save yourself that risk right from the beginning. So data governance is part and parcel of the Universal Data Hub. You'll be able to immediately segment throughout the organization who does what with data collection, who does what with data enrichment, and it's inherent in the architecture. That will reduce meetings, that will reduce phone calls, that will reduce I thought you said, and not here today, I don't know yet, give it another week. All of that disappears because all of that data has been done once and one time only inside the Universal Data Hub. So just to sum it up, this is all about the data, and that's what Telium is trying to solve with the Universal Data Hub. I want to wrap this back to the very beginning of the webinar. This is about solving your data with problems with the UDH. It's about making data available in real time and addressing that operational lag that is plaguing us for several years and is just getting worse. Having the data in real time and being able to activate it to any vendor in the ecosystem completely destroys that lag and makes it something more reasonable. Number 2, providing that continuity and the ability to actually talk to each other using the same nomenclature and the same taxonomy implicitly makes your teams more efficient. Number 3, powering the teams and technologies to work together with the same set of data is going to give rise to new capabilities in your personalization strategies and also your business needs to react in real time. It's the same data being activated across the same channel. Your customer experience will never be fragmented again. The 4th aspect for governance and auditability, I can't stress this enough, this is a tremendous risk for every business despite vertical. We've put it as part of the UDH, as part of the capabilities. It needs to be automated, it needs to be easy to put in place, and it needs to be trackable and auditable. All of those capabilities come with our GDPR package inside the UDH, and you'll be able to see and control your security from day one. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. Always a pleasure to speak with our customers and our prospects in this fashion, and I look forward to seeing you out in the field.